We are back again with LumenTek Electrical's Ryan. He's the owner-operator of LumenTek Electrical, and he's an electrical contractor in the Red Deer area. So Red Deer, Lacombe, Black Falls. Anybody who needs an electrician out there, this is the guy to call. And today we're going to be talking about a hot topic that everybody should know about now. If you've ever had an electrical panel in your house, and if you have a house that was, made a little bit older, a federal Pioneer panel or Federal Pacific panel, they are known for causing problems in your electrical system. So we're going to get into that today. So let's talk a little bit about that. Ryan, so you said you were having a discussion with your guys about these federal breakers. Tell me a story.
We were talking about them with some of the guys, and we're trying to figure out how bad they actually were. Like every electrician will tell you, like we've seen them pulling 30 amps on a 15 amp breaker. It didn't trip. And every electrician that works around them has stories like that. But we weren't actually sure how many of the breakers actually, like what percentage didn't trip and what percentage had problems. So we researched them a bit. There's a few different versions of those breakers that have come out. The worst breakers they found through like independent studies and testing and everything, the worst percentage is 80% of the breakers won't trip at an overload or short circuit, which is basically the only two things you need to worry about in a circuit. So if you overload them and if you short circuit them, 80% of stab blocks won't trip. Then they had a redesign, and they've now got it down to about 23% of the breakers don't trip. And to put that in perspective, most other brands like Eaton, Siemens, Square D, anything like that, they are around 1 to 5% of the breakers won't trip on a short circuit or overload. So anyone that's ever tripped a breaker, you know that like that breaker works. That's what you want. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't trip, then that's a problem, and you won't necessarily know it's a problem until you have other problems.
Yeah. So explain to people why this is such a problem for a homeowner if you have breakers that won't trip.
The breaker is what stops the wire from being overloaded, and your wire's in the wall, so you can't see what's happening inside your wall. So you have to trust the breaker is going to trip when it should. If you overload that wire, what can happen is the more current that goes through the wire, the hotter the wire gets. So when we wire a house or wire any circuit, we size the wire based on what's going to be plugged into it. And then from there, we size the breaker. So if you have a breaker that doesn't trip, we might as well throw the biggest breaker we can on there. That's basically what's happening. And that wire will just keep getting hotter and hotter until it either burns or somehow a connection opens and it stops working. But it's in your wall. You don't know what's happening until something else happens that shows you. So either you have sparks come out of a box or
a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest risk you can have is a fire. So those are pretty interesting results research that you found on these federal breakers. So tell people in the Red Deer area, if they have a home with one of these older panels, what should they do?
You should definitely get it looked at. Like there's different versions of it. Like we said, like there's the original versions where like you might as well just not have breakers because 80% of them won't trip. And then the newer versions are better, but they're still nowhere near the next comparable panel. Like you're 5% to 23, you're almost 5 times worse. So yeah, if you have a stab block panel or Federal Pioneer, they're the same company. They just went under a few different names. Definitely get someone out to check it out. It's worth looking at replacing, whether it's in your budget or not, but at least if you're aware of what can possibly happen, you are aware of what to look for.
Yeah, I know in Strathcona County, they, there's rumblings that insurance companies are going to maybe not insure homes with these panels any longer. Is that true in your area?
We've had a couple customers say they needed them changed out because their insurance companies wouldn't cover them. So I'm sure if some companies are doing it, it'll probably become more and more common. I think it's kind of like this. It's comparable to the Poly B situation with plumbing, where if your house has Poly B, then you have to change it before the home insurance companies will cover it.
Right. So if that's the case, if we have a homeowner who had a house, like what is the range of houses that had those Federal Pacific or Federal Pioneer breakers?
There's tons of them. We've seen houses from the 60s that have it all the way up until the early 2000s.
Okay.
there's quite a few of those panels put in.
Quite prevalent. And so I guess if somebody, has one of those and they call you, what's the first thing that you're going to do in their house?
We would take a look at the panel, see, like if it's what condition the panel's in to start with. So it might be a fairly recent stab block panel, which is still something you want to address, but it's not necessarily as big a deal as if it was like an original 60s one. If it's a 60s one, like you really should replace it.
Yeah.
You should replace any of them, but I understand like it's not something that everyone has the budget for. But we would look at it, see the condition of the panel, and kind of go from there based on what the customer wants.
Yeah. So what kinds of things are you looking at in the panel itself?
Signs of overheating. So you can usually tell where the wire meets the breaker. If the insulation's burnt and bubbling and stuff like that, then obviously it's gotten hot quite a few times in the past, and they really benefit from getting it taken care of.
Oh, one thing that I found when I was an electrician was the breakers would kind of be crispy and fall apart.
Yeah.
That was a telltale sign that it was overheating.
Yeah. And the other problem with them too is the connection where the breaker meets the bus bar is really bad on those panels. Like it's such a small amount of metal that contacts that bus bar that even at the best of times they're loose and they don't grab properly, or they're loose for so long they arc and they weld themselves to the bus bar and then they're stuck in there forever. So you really, there's a whole bunch of issues with those panels.
Bunch of problems. So you look at all of that, and then from there, what is the process for somebody who needs to upgrade either from or just switch out their panel, straight swap out 100 amp panel to 100 amp panel, or 60 amp upgrade to 100 amp and beyond that? What's the process for that with LumenTek Electrical?
First step is figuring out what we need to replace it with. So most of the time, 100 amp panel's sufficient. We just put a new 100 amp panel in with a better type of panel. From there, we have to schedule disconnects, reconnects with the utility company, schedule the electrical inspection, coordinate all of that. So then we can show up, disconnect everything, reconnect the new panel, install everything, label the house, do all that. Because usually when the panel's that old, nothing's labeled correctly. And we got to go through all that and redo it.
You can do it. You can rewire it, put a new panel in there. And what about outside? Do you have to change the meter socket at all?
Depends where you are. A lot of the time we're able to leave it as is, depending on the age of the house and everything like that. In Red Deer specifically, they won't let you reuse the cable that they used the same time they installed those panels. They used a different kind of cable you're not allowed to use anymore between the meter base and panel. So other than Red Deer, we can leave it, but Red Deer wants to change to a different type of cable. So we have to change those if we're doing that, but it's usually only a 6-foot piece of cable.
Okay. And what is the reasoning for that?
That cable wasn't grounded. So it didn't used to have to be grounded, but now the way they want the neutral connection done in Red Deer, where you bond the neutral to ground, has to be done in the panel, not the meter base.
And is there anything else that you want to tell people about the perils of having a Federal Pioneer panel and the breakers in their house?
Our house we live in now actually had one when we bought it, and we lived there for probably 3-4 months before we changed it, and we ran heaters in the garage, ran power tools, everything. And in my head, I'm like, wow, we must have, and the panel wasn't labeled. So knowing I was going to change the panel eventually and label it, I didn't really think much of it. I just assumed we had a bunch of garage circuits, and then we changed the panel and it turns out we had one.
Oh no.
So we ran probably 3,000 watts of space heater power on a breaker that should trip at 1,500 watts, plus saws, nail guns, like everything.
Wow. So even an electrician who knows better fell prey to that problem. Well, luckily nothing bad happened. You didn't have a fire or anything, but still, now you got to run some extra circuits out there.
Yeah, we had to after.
Okay.
Yeah, knowing that we were going to change it, I didn't think too much of it, but.
Oh man. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm glad that's done. So guys, if you are in the Central Alberta region, you're looking for an amazing electrician, look at LumenTek Electrical. You can go to LumenTek Electrical, LumenTek.ca, and you can fill out the form or just call directly on the website there. You can get a hold of Ryan or someone from his team, and they'll come out and give you a quote. Thanks so much, Ryan, for stopping by and telling us all about the Federal Pioneer breakers.
No problem.